Today, I want to talk to you about life in times of global change. Global change is all the change that humans are making on this planet. The worst symptom of global change is climate change. This is like if a big meteorite was coming towards the Earth, going to hit us, going to smash us, going to destroy our beautiful planet. And governments say, well, we still have to recover the dollar or the euro before we can attend this catastrophe. Private enterprise is saying, well, I have to recover my stock value. Otherwise, I cannot attend the problem of this meteorite coming towards the Earth, hitting us very soon. Civil society is waiting for somebody to do something. But we all have to start reacting. We all have to start doing things. And I'm just going to give you some of the information that is available today for science, leading to this urgent change. Just breathe together with the planet. This is the planet breathing. Spring and summer in the northern hemisphere absorbs CO2. Autumn, winter releases it. And every year we can see the planet breathing faster, breathing higher, and the level of CO2 goes rising and rising and rising due to our human activity. Just follow with your breath the earth breathing and try to see and feel how the earth is changing, how the earth is starting to suffer from this increase in speed and actually the lack of oxygen to be able to keep life. If we look at 800,000 years ago, measuring the atmosphere composition in little bubbles trapped in ice, we know that for 800,000 years, the planet was never above 300,000 parts per million. And in the last less than half a century, we've added another 100 parts per million. Look how the Earth starts breathing faster and even going out of the chart in recent years. This is something that we cannot keep on tolerating. The consequence immediately is a rise in temperature. We're going from a blue planet in 1800s, and as we go over the last century, we can see hot areas starting to show up. Now, this is not a uniform distribution. The increase is more to the North Pole and to the South Pole. The increase will be on higher mountains, a lot more than at the ocean level. So we will see important changes where a 2-degree rise globally might mean a 12 or 15-degree rise in the North Pole. This will change the way the planet works. This will change the way our climate system works. This will change definitely the way the ocean behaves on the coastal areas. If we look at last year, we see a very dark scenario of heat changing the planet. This has impact on the thaw of ice. We see Greenland with the summer thaw from a very small melting period during the summer months to last year, 97% of the superficial ice in Greenland started to melt. Last year, we broke several records. We deforested over 5 million hectares. We desertified over 12 million hectares. We threw record amounts of toxic waste into the atmosphere, into the oceans, into the rivers. We did our best to abandon the natural earth. This year, on the 9th of May, we broke a record. We passed 400 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere globally. This will have serious implications. The biggest problem we have is population growth. I was born in 1958 with less than 3 billion people. In 2011, we passed 7 billion people. And there's a strong relationship between people and CO2 level. The more people, the more CO2 we have in our planet. This amount of population growth is starting to turn into urban development, and cities are starting to encroach into the natural areas. This is Guadalajara City, the fastest growing city in Mexico, engulfing a protected area that supplies all the water to Guadalajara. If we keep on encroaching in this area, the city will be without water. But people are still not realizing it. They're wanting these luxury developments in the forest because it's a pretty place to live, but they're going to be without water in the future. All this consumption ends up in waste. And we have the Pacific garbage patch where we see already impacts in wildlife. What comes out of the stomach of a bird that is feeding on plastic, the chicks that die. But these impacts are starting to affect humans also. We don't really realize what we do when we consume. If we go and eat a pizza in South Africa, in Cape Town, it has a footprint of 80,000 kilometers of the different ingredients we're bringing from the whole planet. We cannot keep on living under this way. Currently, in 1 year, humans are consuming what the planet takes 18 months to produce. If we live like a person in the US, everybody on the planet, we need close to 5 planets. If we live like Costa Ricans, we need 1 planet. We have to follow different paradigms of development. We're just squeezing the last drop of juice out of nature. And everybody is telling us we have to stop. The International Energy Agency said we're 5 years from irreversible climate change in 2011, and we're still not doing anything to change this. All the international meetings have not affected the amount of CO2 we're producing in the atmosphere. We're bringing thousands of people together to talk about climate change, but we're not doing anything. And all these international meetings are betting on 450 parts per million. This amount of CO2, 50 parts more than we reached this year, will mean the death of the oceans, will mean the death of many other ecosystems, mountain ecosystems. Actually, what we're looking at is that the coldest months of last century will be warmer than the warmest months of last century. In other words, in winter, we'll be having temperatures warmer than what we had in summer in the last century. If we look at scenarios, just taking the scenario of the ice melt, IPCC in 2007, the International Panel of Climate Change Experts, said we'd lose the North ice cap by the end of the century. Current science says we're going to lose it in a couple of years, if not already this year. Why is this important? Why is this ice melt so important? Because when light comes in and hits the white surface, 90% is reflected as light. When light comes in and hits water, hits soil, it will turn into heat. And the more heat accumulated, the faster the ice will melt. And this air conditioner that we had in the northern part of the planet will turn into a heat sink instead. In 2007, we reached minimum lows in ice melt, but in 2012, we broke the other record. And we're losing more ice than we thought we would be losing at this time. The same thing is happening in the South Pole. Warm ocean currents are starting to melt Antarctica from underneath. And when this starts affecting the ice that's on top, sea level rise very quickly. Right now we're looking at over a meter sea level rise by end of century, maybe even more than that. This we can already see. This is a beach in a national park in Costa Rica in 2008 and in 2012. In 4 years, over 8 meters of coastal erosion is present now. And we'll see other factors coming to speed up climate change, like the methane release. When this permafrost is starting to thaw, it releases enormous amounts of methane, and methane can heat up the planet a lot quicker than CO2. So we really need to take care and see and avoid things like hurricanes coming up to New York. This requires urgent change. This requires massive amounts of people starting to change their consumption patterns. We've seen this all over the place. These early warning signs in the 80s, high temperatures in our countries, Spain totally red, Australia in 2009 burnt for several months. Actually, they've changed their climate charts and they've added 2 new colors with 50 and 54 degrees centigrade in their climate charts. Russia burning with over 50,000 people dying in 2010. The US burning in 2012. This is actually the fire map of 2011. Just look at how we're injuring our planet. Biodiversity loss. We were supposed to halt the biodiversity loss by 2010. Ban Ki-moon in this report says we got to a collective failure. We're not correcting this on time and the impact will be severe. In Costa Rica, we have the honor to have this first species victim of climate change, the golden toad, which died in the 80s. Today, over a third of our amphibian populations are either lost or in the process of getting lost. And we'll lose a lot more in the next coming years. The Amazon, the biggest ecosystem, forested ecosystem on the planet, is bound to die. But already in 2005 and 2010 we had droughts that release huge amounts of carbon, almost equivalent to what the US releases every year. We'll see ecosystem changes, important changes in very short time. This map is from the 2020s in Costa Rica, where we can see a simplification of ecosystems. We're actually already seeing species from below rising and co-living with species up in the highlands, like the toucan that came from the lowlands and now is predating on the quetzal. And we're going to lose quetzal populations because they're not recognizing the toucan as an enemy. In Mexico, the largest forest, tropical forest in Mexico, Calakmul, to be able to survive, keep some of the animals alive, they're bringing trucks with water to give water artificially to these animals. Otherwise, they'd lose them all. The oceans, we're overfishing all the oceans, $80 billion in losses per year. And what is happening? We're just increasing our nets, we're increasing our radars. Dead zones, because of the fertilizers, we're just killing the ocean by generating this bacterial, these algae blooms, where fish and other animals just die off because of no oxygen. This is a report that was presented last year in the Rio meeting. Hot, sour, and breathless, the largest ecosystem on the planet. We're going to go from floods to drought. We're going to lose pollinators. We're going to lose agricultural cycles. We're going to lose food production. If we look at coffee, already our region is losing 20 to 30% of the coffee production every year due to climate change. Actually, if we look at the way we're developing, today we're only using for 90% of our food, 15 plants and 8 animal species. In 12,000 years of our more recent human existence, we used to use 7,000 species. We need to recover this agrobiodiversity. Tourism will be affected. Tourists like nice climate, like nice beaches, like biodiversity. We're losing all of these, so tourism added to the carbon footprint of travel will be affected in all our countries. Health, how can you talk about food safety when you're feeding people under those conditions? Actually, what we'll see is a strong change in governance, a strong change in resource use. We're going to see rapid change in our societies. Change is going to be permanent. It's not going to be an exception. Now, do we have the professionals to deal with it? Are we going to recognize on time the urgency and the magnitude of this? We need to do creative management. We need to look at these scenarios, these future scenarios, choose the one that is best for us and try to pull development to this better scenario. This means focusing on human development. This means focusing on a new global society, a new civilization. If we look at these scenarios for my region, Costa Rica is out of the comfort zone of most of the ecosystems already in the 2020s. If you look at the 2050s, it's even worse. We have the maps on extreme events due to drought, on extreme events due to rain and floods. We know vulnerability. Now, our local governments are actually people and companies looking at these maps to plan development. No, we're still developing hotels with golf courses in areas that are going to have reduction over 50% in their water supply. So we're getting to a point where climate change is not a question of economics, policy, technology. It's a question of a new paradigm for development. We need new leadership for this. We need new governance. We need joint research opportunities. We need to really get together as a global society and look for change. This global society means decreasing consumption, means valuing people for what they are, not for what they have. It means really looking at a different type of society, not based on consumption, but based on values, based on ethics, based on transparency. For change to happen, it has to happen in every individual. But for it to have impact, you need to collectivize, you need to transform individual change into a collective change. This is an emotional change, this is a change in the heart. This is more than economics. We've reached the moment in time where humanity has to decide if it wants to keep on living on this planet the way we're used to living on it. We're that little dot in space, a very small, insignificant dot. Please let us be the time remembered for having awoken, for having made a change, for having looked for this justice in development. And really the celebration of life. Thank you.